And something that my guest yesterday made very clear is that this international banking class, this cartel, is willing to go to the most psychopathic lengths possible or imaginable to preserve itself. And I think we're very much seeing that play out in Ukraine right now. And we've seen it play out over the past 2 years with the COVID-19 agenda. So, Matthew, before the break, we were talking about some of the key players involved in reviving the eugenics movement. And I know there's a lot we could unpack there, and a lot that unfortunately we have to skip over due to time constraints. So I want to dive right into how eugenics is operating with what we're seeing happen in the world right now, particularly with regard to Ukraine and also the past 2 years with the COVID-19 agenda. My contention being that, as I said, the international banking cartel, which is the steward of Western empire, is willing to go to the utmost lengths of depravity to preserve itself and its power. And that includes reducing human populations by means of working with the worst elements imaginable. And although, that may not be their end goal in what's happening, it certainly it benefits them for populations to be reduced, for people to be slaughtered en masse. So I don't know if you agree with that, but I would like to talk about how eugenics applies to what we're seeing right now.
Yeah, absolutely. And I know we're running short on time, and so it's a shame that we have to, by necessity, skip over and oversimplify. But that's vital, that to keep in mind that ultimately there is this obsessive quasi-religious drive ultimately to reduce the world population down to what mathematical computer models that they've been using, especially since the early 70s, have been saying is acceptable, sustainable quantities. I think the relative consensus from these Club of Rome funded programs, these models, have calculated about 1 billion people. Sometimes it's open for debate, 2 billion, 500 million, it fluctuates, but it's a false debate. Because again, like I said at the beginning, this whole thing is founded upon a certain false assumption that human beings are just another form of talking animal with the same constraints faced by other animal populations that are extended to human beings. The reality is that unlike animals, like, Abraham Lincoln made this point that beavers make dams, but the quality of dams that we see from beavers making dams today compared to those that we've seen that beavers were making 5,000 years ago are qualitatively no different. Human beings are the only species that improves our workmanship through discoveries and inventions. These are metaphysical things that you cannot chart in a computer model. So they're religiously committed to this thing, and they masquerade behind the term science. Just quick, the World Economic Forum, the technocratic sort of neo-Malthusian overhaul or revolution that took place over the dead bodies of people who were anti-Malthusian, like John F. Kennedy, Bobby Kennedy, Martin Luther King, Enrico Mattei. There's so many people in the 60s who fought against this and who were mowed down in order to bring about this type of regime change, of this paradigm shift that, again, targeted the baby boomer generation. The idea was to transfer our values from being protect humankind against empires to protecting nature from humans. So one of the things Julian Huxley did is he created the environmental movement as it is known today, with the International Union for the Conservation of Nature, the World Wildlife Fund, which he created with Prince Bernhard and Prince Philip, and a bunch of other organizations as well. The eugenics movement transformed itself into things like Engender Health, which is a major organization working with Bill Gates's Gavi and the World Health Organization today. The Galton Institute, which had its name changed from it was once the British Eugenics Society. That name change only happened in 1989. That is also closely working with AstraZeneca, Oxford, and Gavi. A lot of these things were at the heart of this corruption of health science in especially the early 70s, and the creation of this big pharmaceutical complex above nation states. So it's all sort of different aspects of the same thing. I don't want people to get too caught up in the details of it, but these are different branches of the same operation. Julian Huxley also was the founder of the term transhumanism, which is at the heart of this religion for the master class that we hear from people like Yuval Harari and Klaus Schwab, that we're going to merge human beings with machines, with CRISPR technology, and create a new type of society, a new type of species favorable to the ruling class. And the new selectors of nature are not random mutations, as they say was formerly the case under Darwinian rules, but rather it will be the CEOs of Google and Facebook and the World Economic Forum is how they spin it. It's all bunk. This is not real science. And I say this is a religious, an anti-human religion. And this is why they're really afraid. This gets at the heart of Ukraine, because what they're on. I think everyone knows at this point that there has been a continuity of second, third generation Nazis through Azovs and other things, maintaining a sort of mythos that the bad guys of World War II were actually the Russians, and the Germans, the Nazis, were not so bad after all. They glorify people like Stefan Bandera, Mikhail Lebed, these Ukrainian fascist eugenics pro-Nazis. These are national heroes by these crowds in Ukraine today, which is what Putin talks about when he says we're going to denazify. Russia, China, India, the whole Eurasian grouping of leading nations right now has announced the creation of a new alternative financial security economic architecture. More recently this week under Sergei Glaziev's helm, one of Putin's leading collaborators, a very strong anti-Malthusian figure. Who has announced the creation of a new project to, again, create a new currency outside of the control of the collapsing petrodollar of the West. Saudi Arabia has even announced that they're going to allow for the sale and of oil from Saudi Arabia in yuan. Many countries now are jumping on board with this other system, which increasingly has an orientation towards the things that America used to do, like national banking, the greenback type system of Lincoln. That's the sort of credit mechanisms that we see building large scale infrastructure in science. And the point I often make in a lot of my writings is that other Eurasian partnership is founded upon a different type of operating system, which is it's not a Malthusian closed system where you have to adapt to scarcity. It's based upon large scale, long-term thinking, which is open system. It's based upon the introduction of new discoveries into the productive process, which allows you to overcome. It's driven by the overcoming of limits to growth. That's why it is incompatible fundamentally with the type of Great Reset depopulation agenda, which has been on the books now for many decades. These countries, Russia especially, and China, were all supposed to be in the same building that was going to be detonated when the time was ripe for this massive chaos moment, this shock therapy trauma that was supposed to be done in order to get human beings to submit to a new type of ethic of depopulation. You know, this idea of a Green New Deal for getting rid of fossil fuels, nuclear power, put it all in the garbage bin has been the design. And instead adapt to think little, think small, think about green windmills and solar panels instead of what we've been using now, which the effect of these things, if you get society addicted, as they're doing currently, they're doubling down in Europe. You know, Germany is shutting down all of its nuclear within, I think, by the end of this year. All across Europe.
It's economic suicide is what's happening.